Dry weather is going to continue across the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states for at least another couple of days. However, there's some rain on the way for Wednesday night and Thursday, and actually for interior elevated areas of the Northeast down into the Appalachians, could see the first accumulating snows of the season as well. So things are a changing pattern wise across the United States. What it means in the longer term, well, beats the hell out of me. But we'll try to figure it. We'll try to figure it out here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which you can support by simply shopping with the referral link that's pinned to the top of the chat board or on the description to this podcast. And with the holidays coming, what better way to do it? You get your stuff. Amazon will throw us a little bit of coin for sending you there. Doesn't cost you a dime. And we appreciate whatever support you can get by shopping our Amazon link. And that is my Christmas tree. It is up. Um, you may notice, Joe, that I have my fireplace so well trained that I can actually get the flames to just stay still for the Joe, for the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. But I figured it'd be a nice background for the next month and a half or so. So, and
Well, you
there's
kept it up for a
no
whole
gifts on the under the trees either.
you kept it up for a whole year a couple of years ago, so
Yeah, well,
why not?
I did it for the grandkids, but
Yes.
no, it's nice. I have to tell you, I Friday, I made a decision. It was sort of like it started as one decision and it started snowballing. So for the better part of a week, I was thinking I got to get the tree out of the shed, get it into the house, because my plan is since I'm hosting Thanksgiving and my grandchildren are going to be here, so my plan was to have the tree up and then have them decorated, and I have it hooked up to Alexa. So all you have to do is just tell it to turn the tree on, and it'll turn the tree on. But I'm sitting here and I'm seeing this tree, this bare tree, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to decorate the tree. So that's what I wound up doing. And then from there, I said, well, why don't I get the other stuff and put up the nativity scenes and the stockings on the fireplace? And before you know it, I had the whole house done.
Well, enjoy. The only time that here in our house that we ever had all the stuff up before Thanksgiving was 3 years ago when we went to Antarctica and we were going to be away for the first 2 weeks of December. And we said, my goodness, we can't come back and, then have to quickly put everything up and, before the hot. So we put everything up before Thanksgiving. And it was the first, then probably will be the only Thanksgiving where our guests came and we had the whole place decked out like you have it decked out right now.
Yeah,
Are
that's
you having
nice.
Thanksgiving at your house or you're going to
Yes,
go to?
I'm hosting it. Yes,
Oh, lovely.
I already bought everything I need to make my sausage pecan cornbread stuffing and pecan corn. It's not pecan, it's pecan. Um, my sausage cornbread pecan stuffing. I got the turkey. It's in the freezer. I, got a few other things that I'm going to make, and I'm all set to go. I'm all ready. I just real one quick question, last question. Uh, if far be it from me, but you said last week that you wanted to go ahead and put the outside the Christmas stuff up. Uh, you got a couple of days before it actually rains and turns colder. Just to just putting it out there.
Now, Renata is, as I said, Renata always waits until it turns
But
windy and frigidly
and
cold, and
bitter. Oh yeah.
then she makes the decision. Okay, it's time to put the lights up. And now this
Oh,
year, instead of having two deer, we have three deer to put up.
right.
So,
Okay. Well, you know what? You know, she's putting your
I,
foot
and
down.
and I thank Dennis Cassia for being so concerned about my welfare. She says, to watch out when you climb the ladder.
Right. And no pasta, Vincent. No, I don't. In my family,
Antipasta.
we
Antipasta.
right. Well, there might be like little nibbly things ahead of time. No, you know what? It's too much food. It's way too much food. Years ago, I had family that did that, and it's like you just walk. You walked out 10 pounds heavier than you walked in, and I'm not sure that I don't. It's just three adults and three kids. So no, I'm not going to do that. All right, so let's talk about some weather because we do have rain. It looks like it's coming for Wednesday night into Thursday. Now I'm gonna say two things. You may agree, you may disagree. I think there's a chance Wednesday night into Thursday morning if the there's an occluded cold front, an occluded front that's going to be swinging through. And if you folks ever look at a weather map, you'll see the structure is like in three pieces. You've got the purple part, which is the occluded part, and then you've got the cold front that extends from that, and you got a warm front that extends from that. And where the three meet, we refer to that as the triple point. And the one thing I noticed on the runs the last several days is that the triple point, which is where a new low is probably going to redevelop on, moves right over essentially nearby northern New Jersey, New York City, Long Island. So I think if that works out that way, where the triple point, gets into the area in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, I think somebody could wind up with a solid inch or maybe even an inch and a quarter out of this, perhaps even a little bit more. That's the first thing, and the second thing is that uh, this is a really deep, intense upper trough of mid-November. I mean, the upper heights that measure the strength of the system up at 18,000 feet are extremely low. You're going to have a lot of cold air aloft. You'll have some cold air mixed down to the surface, but there'll be a lot of cold air aloft. So I think that certainly for elevated areas in, say, northeastern Pennsylvania, the Catskills, up to the Adirondacks and parts of western New York, I think they may see their first accumulating snows of the season.
Just in time for Thanksgiving.
Yes. Well, Thanksgiving's got another week to go after that. It's not next week, it's the week after.
Right,
That's
right.
kind of how I'm seeing this week evolve.
Well, this is not going to be for people who are jumping up and down and getting all excited. This is not going to be a drought buster. This is going to be more like a drought denter. We still need here in the immediate New York City metropolitan area about 8 or 9 inches to get back to normal. And as you just pointed out, Joe, maybe about an inch coming out of this.
Yeah.
So we need it. We're taking small steps toward rectifying this exceedingly dry situation that we're in right now. But it looks like the pattern is changing, and it looks
Yes.
like we'll be at least seeing on a somewhat regular basis shots of precipitation. Not every day, but every several days there'll be another chance for us, getting a bit wet. So
Yeah.
back to a more normal pattern, hopefully, as we move toward the end of the month and into the start of the new month of December.
I think where we caught a big break, when you go back a week or so ago, when some of the models were making Sarah into a major hurricane in the Central Caribbean, and then taking it up through the Yucatan Peninsula and going into Florida. The fact that that did not happen is a well, it's a good thing for two reasons. One is Florida didn't get a hurricane. Second of all, it uh, a major hurricane in the Caribbean, all that's going to do is enhance the southeast ridge again, and that didn't happen. So it looks like that stake has finally been driven through the heart of that thing, and it's going to allow weather systems to move from west to east. And by the way, that's going to lead me to two criticisms, and it's been driving me crazy the last couple of weeks. And I don't know if you look at your Facebook feed on your for your weather page where your weather page is, because that's a separate feed. So you get all sorts of separate, stuff on there. I cannot tell you how many posts that I saw talking up Sarah before it developed off that long range guidance that a major hurricane was going into Florida, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then you have on the other side of this, you have for the last 2 weeks or so, every time the weather models showed some sort of a snowstorm in the long range, and it did do that on a couple of occasions. All post after post after post, and all I'm going to say is, I really wish these people. They're not going to. They certainly don't listen to me. Okay, they certainly don't watch this show. Um, but I wish they would just stop. Just stop it. It serves no purpose. It's harmful, I think, for at many levels to do that. But a lot of these people are not professionals. They're running Facebook groups or whatever they're doing. But it just got so out of hand, a day after, multiple times a day, and it's only November. What's it going to be like when we get into the winter months?
Well, Bill Corbell, a mutual friend of ours, a long time on WOR radio and also for many, many years on News 12 Long Island. He took a swipe at the folks over at AccuWeather. He said when they apparently AccuWeather had put out forecasts warning Florida that they were going to be hit hard next week by Sara, and he said, all the years that I was on the air, I always took the tropical cyclone or hurricane forecast directly from the Hurricane Center because they're the ones who are specifically making outlooks for that type of weather. He said, I rarely, if ever, made judgment calls on long range, tracks for hurricanes. He said he was actually, he almost was like telling AccuWeather. He says, what you just said, Joe, enough with this,
Yeah,
enough
I saw the
predicting.
post, by the way. I saw his post.
Yeah, enough with forecasting more than a week in advance the potential for a major hurricane in any one given location, in this case, Florida. And he was absolutely right. As I've said many, many times on this airwave and also in other places as well, I've often considered myself, in terms of weather forecasting, I am a GP, a general practitioner. I know enough to
As opposed
make
to what, an OBGYN?
but just make a forecast is one thing. But when you start playing up the fact that, oh, I know exactly where this storm is going to go a week from now, this hurricane, or talk about severe weather, or talk, a long range forecast, I always refer to or make reference to the places at NOAA that specifically forecast for that type of condition. National Hurricane Center, Climate Prediction Center, Storm Prediction Center. Those are the people, those are the men and women who specialize in that particular branch of meteorology and forecasting. And if there's something going on, I'll just take a look and go with what they're going with, as opposed to saying, oh, listen to me. In 8 days, this hurricane that you see now near the Yucatan Peninsula is going to come up and go right through Florida and cause all kind of damage and destruction. I'm not into that sort of thing.
Well, I think it's okay I think it's okay for professionals to speculate, to look at the upper air pattern and look for things that maybe, might make mean one thing or another. But at least you give it, we're giving it some context when we do that. It's not
Right.
like we're throwing a map up and saying, there's a major hurricane on the GFS heading for Florida on the whatever, let's say it's the 300 hour. And then put up a disclaimer, a supposed disclaimer that says it's not a forecast. And what the hell are you putting it up for? You obviously, I mean, we know why they're doing it. It's for clickbait, and I get that. Okay,
You're
but
putting
but
up
but to
the
put a disclaimer that said that by saying, oh, but it's not a forecast, then you're saying it's useless. So why put it up in the first place?
you're putting it up to titillate people,
Yeah.
and that's what you're doing.
All right. Well, yeah, that's right. You know, it's a battle we're never going to win because it's going to happen anyway. Brandon Doherty, though, has won us over with hitting a super chat tonight, and so has Gary Crosby, hitting super chat.
Gary Crosby?
Yes,
Really?
I think no relation to the Bing. or Kathy. But no matter. Thank you. Unless you are, I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying. But thank you. Excuse me for hitting super chat. Okay, let's get to the maps. And just want to, very quickly say welcome to everybody on the chat board, including the troll that's on there. And those of you lurking in the background, welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. So we're back for another week, Sunday to Thursday at 7:35 p.m. And back and the occasional Friday and Saturday when there's a storm around. By the way, just a heads up, I'm trying to put something together and I'm telling you for the first time too, but you already know just from the chat that I started. But the 5-year anniversary of our demise from working at FiOS One News is coming up, so I thought it might be a fun thing to get all the FiOS Mets together in one show. So if I can pull this off, um, we're going to try to shoot for this Friday, if that works for you, Joe.
This Friday?
Yes.
You mean our day off?
That was normally our day off. I understand. Um, but anyway, just put that in the back of your mind that there's a possibility that we could be adding a Friday show this week, and if we do, I think it'll be a very fascinating show. Let's put it that way. So, those of you that are new to the show, welcome to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss us. And if you like the show, hit the like button. And Steve Lapointe has hit super chat. Thank you. Yes, over 80, actually 90, almost 90 years of experience. The thing is every year goes by, we get to add 2 years to that number.
Don't remind me. There are things that I look at and I say I do like a double take and say, "Oh my goodness, that was that many years ago."
Hmm.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no,
There was
we've
an
got
article.
90, we've got closer to 90, Steve. It's 90 years. So, and as I said, it goes up quick every year. Um, okay, let's see what's going on across the US of A and take a look at the watches and warnings map, which, as everybody knows lately, hasn't really shown a whole lot other than parts of the Northeast and northern Mid-Atlantic being on fire with the drought conditions, red flag warnings, and there's still going to be fire risk at least through Wednesday because of how dry everything is. Winter storm warnings are up for the Cascades and down into Northern California. You also have some flood watches up in and around Northwest Washington, and I think that flash flood watches include Seattle. We have flood watches up for northwest and west parts of western Oklahoma, a couple of counties in southeast Louisiana and southern Mississippi. Wind advisories are up also from West Texas through Oklahoma. We've got high wind watches up for western half of South Dakota. We've got winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories for parts of northern Idaho and western Montana. So things are happening in the west. And as we check out the satellite loop, a couple of things here. There's some high clouds coming in ahead of another cold front. And by the way, if you look out to the east, this storm that's south of Nova Scotia and south of Newfoundland has been out there all week, and it has not gotten out of the way. It's just basically reformed itself as additional energy came through midweek. So it is going to finally start moving, but while it's out there, it's going to, of course, diminish this cold front as it moves through. And other than these clouds, we're not going to see much of anything as far as showers are concerned during the overnight. Moisture's pouring into Texas, moisture pouring into the northwest. And you can see what is now Tropical Depression Sara moving across the Yucatan, actually moving pretty far south. It's um, came into Belize, skirted the whole north coast of Honduras over the last 4 days with uh, torrential rains in the mountains. And now it's inland in Mexico. And uh, I don't really see much of a future with this. It should be gone before too long.
I would agree with you on that. There isn't really too much well, we haven't had much to say about it for the last day or two. So It's just like it's slowly fading away, if you will.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. They have not. I was just looking at the. Oh, they are. They're still more going to put out advisories here. So they're not done writing advisories. So there might be one or two more before they're done. And even though some of that moisture may emerge into the Southwest Gulf, it's hard to imagine, given the upper air conditions, that that's going to do anything. So thankful, at least from the standpoint that it didn't become a major hurricane and moved into the Eastern Gulf, because that would have been problematic for Florida, and also the fact that we still have to be dealing with this southeast ridge that would have gotten reinforced, and that could have screwed up the whole weather pattern and kept it from changing. And here's just a close-up view, by the way, of Sarah, which if you plot these things, it's at 17.8 and 89.5, moving west-northwest at 12. Uh, it still has a circulation, a low-level circulation, 1,003 millibars, and top winds of 35 miles an hour. And here's the radar tonight, which again, look, you got these showers. They're all light across Lake Erie into Lake Ontario, and also back in southern Lake Huron and southern Michigan to back to Chicago. All of that's going to fall apart.
All of it.
All of it. Not a flake, not an ice pellet, nothing. There might be a couple of showers in parts of upstate New York north of I-90, but not going to see a thing. Got some decent rains going on in Texas, and this is due to low pressure that's developing there, and that's going to start the ball rolling for the system on Thursday. And here comes more energy in the Pacific Northwest with mountain snows and valley rains, and that is going to continue as well over the next couple of days. Storm Prediction Center, just want to point out a couple of things. We have an enhanced risk of severe weather uh, indicated for parts of north central Texas, and a larger area of slight risk that pushes up into Oklahoma, a 2 to 5% tornado risk tonight in that zone. And also, um, I don't know what is the wild, they had an elevated wild fire outlook, elevated for northern New Jersey, Long Island, the Hudson Valley, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and southern New Hampshire. Though they didn't put up red flag warnings today. Uh, but uh, what is the state, Mr. Rayo, of the wildfires up in not only your neck of the woods, but in the general area there?
It's still bad. There's one particular area where something like 5,000 acres has been burned, and we actually got a break today because even though it was quite warm, it got up to 61 here at the home base in Putnam Valley. It was warm, but it was dry, low humidity. But tomorrow the problem will be again the winds picking up. The winds were not all that much to write home about today, but tomorrow we could be looking at winds again in excess of
Hey
20 or
Joe, it's
maybe
been a
about
while.
to
It's James.
30
Just want
miles
to
an
show you.
hour,
I'm
and that
standing
will only
literally in the.
serve to help to increase or accentuate the burn probability. So, but it's still bad up here, Joe. We did not have, like for example, today I believe the National Weather Service only issued kind of a special weather statement. There were no red flag warnings that were in effect. But tomorrow, with the way the winds are expected to increase or freshen up, who knows? We may be seeing a return to the potential for more fiery conditions. And of course, this will continue up until Wednesday or Wednesday night when the first raindrops begin to fall. Boy, we could certainly use, if for nothing else, to help to uh, lower the threat. Even a small amount of rainfall that would also help the firefighters who have been. I saw on one news report a couple of days ago, one firefighter said, "I've been doing this job for like 30 years. I've never seen anything like this to try to tamp down, brush fire flames of the like that we have been going through for the past several days." So we certainly could use a break. We will get some later in the week, but unfortunately, I think tomorrow, with the increase in the winds again, and also the um, low humidity and another mild day, relatively speaking, again, maybe at or above 60, will be uh, once again on the frying pan no pun intended, for
Right. James Harris, who watches this show, and from time to time he sends pictures and videos. And thank you, James, for sending this. This is Greenwood Lake, a wildfire going on there. The shots of I tried to enlarge it, but I'm not really able to. But you can see it's pretty impressive, or at least you could have seen until I just accidentally knocked it off the screen. But there you go. They've been ranging. I've seen people posting about the fact that there's been you can smell the smoke in the air just about everywhere. So we really do need to get out of this, and get some rain in here. I mean, if we get a solid inch of rain Wednesday night and Thursday, that'll at least help to dampen out some of these fires, although they're probably embers are going to burn for a little while. It may take, it's going to take at least maybe a couple of weather systems to move on through, and we may get a couple over time. The Storm Prediction Center for tomorrow does not have any critical area indicated at this time. As far as severe weather is concerned for tomorrow, the area shifts eastward, marginal risk in the lower Mississippi, and then on up into western Missouri and eastern Kansas at a marginal risk, with slight risk north central Texas into south central Oklahoma. And once again, we have a 2 to 5% tornado risk there. And day three, which is Tuesday into Wednesday, we have a marginal risk southeast Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama to the Florida Panhandle as the next cold front starts to set up and begin moving to the east. Now, rainfall over the next 7 days. Total precip, because some of this is in upstate New York in the elevated areas, and also in northeastern Pennsylvania, is probably going to fall as some accumulating snow. So we're looking at an inch and a half plus uh, in upstate New York and in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. Now that's going to help them quite a bit, especially in Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire, where they're also been dealing with this drought situation. Amounts do go down as you go south, but if WPC is right, they've got an inch across northern New Jersey, northern Pennsylvania, over Long Island, southern and southeastern New England. Gets down to a half an inch in southern New Jersey, where they are in extreme drought or exceptional drought, one of the two. So they actually would love this map to be flipped in reverse. Dry from Virginia mostly, very light precip from Virginia south to eastern Georgia, but then the western half of the state and across the Gulf states, particularly along the Gulf Coast, we've got an area of 3 to 4 inches being indicated. Southern Alabama, southern Mississippi into the Florida Panhandle. In the plains, southern into the central plains, we've got a very large area of inch and a half to 2.5 inches of liquid, and up to an inch to an inch and a half extends all the way up to Minnesota into south central Canada, and a clobbering of rain, 10 inches or more expected over the next 7 days in many areas in Northern California and southwestern Oregon. Uh, it's a little bit lower, but still substantial precipitation moving up through western Oregon and western Washington, and of course in the Sierra Nevadas. I'm sorry, in the Cascades. We are talking heavy snows where we're seeing winter storm warnings going on there. So let's look at this first weather system, and this is going to be for Wednesday night into Thursday. You got this low that's running out of the Central Plains, heading up into Minnesota. It occludes out. The energy gets shifted eastward and reforms. Here's the occlusion I'm talking about. The thing that makes me a little nervous is going into Wednesday. There's not a whole lot of precip going on anywhere. It all kind of self-generates overhead. So you hope that this works out. And it does, at least certainly the GFS and particularly the European, this is the representation of the radar. This would be overnight Wednesday night into early Thursday morning. It's got a fairly solid area of rain with some patches of heavy rain. But Joe, the problem here is that it's like 6 hours. It's in and out
right.
really fast. And then you're going to have to hope that this cold upper low sits overhead and creates a very unstable cold atmosphere, which it does play out that way. In upstate New York, where you see the dark blue, that's all potentially heavy wet snows in elevated areas, getting down into northern Pennsylvania. And maybe we could see some showery rains uh, later in the day, Thursday, and perhaps on Friday, because that upper low is going to sit there for a while. And then gradually, as we go into the weekend, you'll start to see it pull out. The other thing is, it is bringing down some colder air. The colder air is more aloft than it is at low levels, but it will be noticeably colder at the for starting Thursday, and particularly for Friday and Saturday. I think we could see 2 days where temperatures don't get out of the 40s.
It's going to be most interesting to see. I'm wondering, Joe, and you may chuckle at this, but with the upper low in that position, do you think there's any chance for any kind of convection that may?
Well,
Uh,
it crossed my mind that that's possible, and I think it's also possible. Let me bring up the eastern up view so we can see. This is a really powerful upper low that is coming down into the northeast. And this was Saturday, so we'll get that out of the way. And here comes all that energy looks like it goes up into Minnesota. Suddenly the upper low is forced southeastward because of what's going on upstream in northeastern Canada up to Greenland. And you got this really vigorous and very cold upper air low that drops down into Pennsylvania and over New Jersey. I don't think it's out of the question uh, that that uh, that some people may wind up seeing. Maybe not down near the coast, but maybe not far from the coast, maybe even by you, where you could get into some grapple or a few wet snowflakes in there if it's cold enough. I mean, this is a pretty strong upper low we're dealing with.
this kind of looks like what you sometimes see in March and April.
Yes,
And indeed, and when you see this type of a pattern in March and April, sometimes you do get. Now you mentioned grapple, but I mean, like sometimes you get what some of the old timers at the various weather offices refer to as hailers. Um, a rumble of thunder, and all of a sudden, get a little pea-sized hail coming down because
right.
the atmosphere literally is being upturned by the tremendous instability that is going on aloft. So yeah, and don't don't be surprised. You get those occasional strong wind gusts. 20, 30, 40 miles. That'll be the next weekend. Will be when I'll put the Christmas decorations up, climbing that ladder with those fierce winds and the cold temperatures.
Yeah, it's a very blocky look that evolves across northern Canada this week, which is forcing all these upper lows so far to the south. You see those two purple areas, one over Hudson Bay, the other one over Alaska. And if you look at the map long enough, it looks like you have two evil eyes are looking at you. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, that's forcing these upper lows to just basically, um, get
yeah, can't go
displaced
anywhere.
further south. Can't go anywhere. And, you
Yeah,
got this, the one that's sitting, if we go back, I'm going back to last Thursday, that low that's sitting uh, southeast of 40 and 60 backs up into Nova Scotia. And then you had this upper low that moved off the mid Atlantic coast. It just sort of rotated around and became the new upper low near Atlantic Canada. So that just kept everything from moving. Uh, Otherwise, the other thing that's happened that's a big change is that I can't go back far enough to show it because it already started changing late last week. But there was a massive Pacific fire hose jet from Japan to the West Coast. Just a straight line, screaming westerly winds. That has finally broken down. And you've got this big cutoff that's sitting, off of the coast of Washington and Vancouver Island underneath this big upper high. So that the Pacific jet pattern breaking down is a big catalyst for what's going on, obviously, in the east. Now, if we go out longer term, the other change is the fact that now with everything starting to move again, as we go through late next week, as we get this next system to start to finally move out next weekend, there's another trough, an upper low that comes in at the beginning of Thanksgiving weekend in the Northeast. So that might bring another shot for a bit of rain. And then that goes out, and then there's another trough behind that one. And then there's another one behind that one, and then there's another one behind that one. And by that time, the last day on the long range on the 12Z run is December the 3rd. So um, it does seem like we're finally getting into a place where we're going to be getting some chances for rain. And maybe if we get enough chances, the numbers will start to add up.
Well, we certainly can use it, and for all of you out there who are saying, "Well, when are we going to have a pattern change?" If this isn't the pattern change we've been waiting for, Joe, I don't know what is.
No, I agree with you. This is a yeah, the pattern change you want, the pattern change you get are not always the same. Okay, it's not either or. There's an almost infinite number of ways to for the atmosphere to set up, and there are also a large number of ways where the atmosphere could set up where it still stays dry. It might change the sun, maybe it'll be cold and dry or cooler and dry. It might be cool and wet, but not wet enough. And in rare years, this time of year, it could be cold and with some snow threats. So I don't know what the final answer to that question is going to be, but we know it's changing, and that's good news because at least we're going to get some progression, weather systems being able to move along from west to east, the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico occasionally opening up to feed in some moisture. So that'll be a plus. But it's not going to solve the one or two of these storm systems. It's not is not going to solve the drought. You're going to need multiple systems over the next 5 to 6 weeks to really put a serious dent into this drought situation.
Now, Joe DiBarbieri on the chat board says he's hoping for a failed La Nina, like the years 1959, 1966, 1978, and 1980. And I should point out, Joe, that the folks over at the Climate Prediction Center, they keep they keep insisting that we're going to have a La Nina for this upcoming winter season, but they keep lowering the probabilities. Now I think it's down to like 58% for a La Nina. They're still waiting for the
It
La
it
Nina to develop,
it didn't come
but
for hurricane season.
yep, it sure didn't. And apparently Joe DiBarbieri suggests that when you don't have La Ninas, or when the projection for a La Nina fails, um, that it's good for wintry weather. I've never seen
Well, the
the
years he what were the years he mentioned?
1959, 1966, 1978, and 1980. Well, we all remember
Well, 66 and
78.
1978. Well, was it 77, 78, or was it 78, 79? But either one had robust winters for much of the eastern. Well, the 78, 79, it was more, if you were west of the Appalachians, it was a brutal winter. But we were on the edge for the longest time. There was 4 really cold weeks at the end of January to the middle of February. So I mean, is when he says 78, does he mean 77, 78, or 78, 79? I mean, either way, I think it's fine. 66 would be okay. 66, 67 was a gangbusters winter. And what was the one after 78?
1980. But I don't remember
I
1980.
don't
I think
remember 1980 being anything. For some
it was a
reason, I
cold
wanted.
winter. It was
I'm
cold, but we kept missing storms. We didn't really
right,
see.
and I think it was a dry winter for the most part too.
Yeah.
I think that
And 59,
January
I
was
don't.
like really dry.
The only thing I remember about 1959 is my sister was born.
Yes. Super chats, thank you. We've got a couple here. Joe S. Thank you for hitting the tip jar. And Mark G. A generous tip jar hit. Thank you very much. Just joined,
I
got
guess it's his
home.
birthday, right?
Happy birthday. Thank you for sharing your birthday with us. Many, many more for you. Happy birthday, sir. And thanks for hitting the tip jar. Uh, so anyway, I'm bringing up, let's bring up I'm going to bring up the European and shambles. Okay. We haven't looked at the European and shambles. By the way, folks, I might have mentioned this last week. Tropical Tidbits now on the European has added Well, two things. They now go out to 360 hours on the primary runs and 144 on the in between. And also, they added a rain frozen map as opposed to just plain one that just shows plain precip and it's all green. So now they got the rain snow one out, like the GFS. Okay, so just looking at the
Documenting, I hate to interrupt,
yeah,
but
go ahead. No,
documenting 47, which is a new one for us, at least a new one for me on the chat board. He wants to know what and shambles are.
all right. So it's the ensembles of the models, the ensemble suite, the ensemble runs, but I call them. I gave her. I have baptized them, and I call it Ann Mrs. Ann Samble, Ann Sambles, or in this case, the Ann Shambles. And so anyway, that's what that is. All right, just looking at the European ensembles going forward as we pass through Thanksgiving. I mean, here's this is for the 21st. So this is next week, right? No. What's today? The 17th. So this is this week. I'm sorry. There are those two nasty looking eyes of purple that are staring back at us with a mean look. So there's your first upper low. And then as we go through into next week, I mean, it does show a colder look on the European ensembles for Thanksgiving week, particularly right after Thanksgiving, and then beyond that, going into the beginning of December. So the ensembles on the European have a fairly cold look for the end of the month and the beginning of December. I'm sorry, I should say a colder look. I think that's a better term. And the GFS also. Uh, does have the same idea here. It's not always that the two models are in lockstep, but it seems like right after Thanksgiving, we seem to see lower heights and troughing in the east and ridging in the western part of the United States for the end of November and the beginning of December. So, everything seems to be trending in that direction. I would just say that I don't know how this is all going to, obviously, I don't know how this is all going to ultimately wind up. I will be very happy if we just get you know the lack of rain is a really serious issue here. So I would like to at least see that solved, or at least get to a pattern where we're getting precip on a regular basis, like every 3 or 4 days or so, and get back to some semblance of normalcy. Because we don't want to find ourselves in a dangerous situation if, God forbid, we don't have a if we don't get snow cover to feed the reservoirs over the wintertime. It's going to be, it could be a really serious problem uh, come next spring.
Absolutely, absolutely. We don't, and the funny thing is, I can remember years when we had very dry conditions, drought years. 1965, for example, the year when the percentage of or capacity of the reservoirs in New York went down to 26%. And yet, in those very dry situations, I don't recall the brush fire or fire danger anywhere near what we're seeing right now. I don't know whether or not maybe in those years the mainstream media just didn't cover that situation as much as they're doing right now, but I don't really remember 1965. I think the early 1980s we had very dry conditions for a while. Don't remember anything about the mention. It was always, the amount that was in the reservoirs was they rarely ever mentioned anything about dry conditions setting off fires, as we're seeing right now here in 2024. But in any case, yeah, you're absolutely correct.
I think you hit it on the nose with regards to uh it probably didn't the wildfires probably didn't get much media coverage. The news organizations then were not nearly as um what's the word I'm looking for? They weren't nearly as big. The local news stations weren't nearly as big as they became over time. They were really small and didn't have the capacity to do that kind of thing. I mean, uh, it's not. This is the day. These are the days before satellite trucks and all and live shots. It just didn't happen. So I would probably go with the fact that they just didn't cover it.
Yeah, let's face it. In those days, back in the 1960s, for example, um, weather was treated as a joke.
Right.
Really, it was the
So
place where it was the place where news was the hard-hitting thing. Sports, of course, was important, and then there was weather. And
exactly.
weather was where they had the court jesters, so to speak. The only TV station locally, really, in the 1960s was NBC when they hired Dr. Frank Field and said we're no longer taking weather uh, lightly. We have hired a real um, you know a person who has been a meteorologist, and he changed the course of everything. Frank Field, if you think about it, first one to ever show radar as part of his forecasts, and but in any case,
Yeah.
things things certainly changed after I think the 1980s. They
Mm,
started treating weather more importantly, and I don't know when you and I got started in this business, we were still trying to argue with news directors and executive producers and saying, "This is important. Don't you understand? This is important." Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Joe. No, no big deal. And now, of course, in my opinion, weather really drives the newscast, as we're seeing with what's happening right now with the dry conditions and also with the wildfires.
Joe DeBarberi, thank you for putting up this information. And he's mentioning the fact, and you mentioned this last week about in 1965 they had to take water out of the Hudson River because the drought was so bad, and it was the driest decade from 1956 to 1965, and that drought, that very dry decade, ended in September of 1966. And he also, April 1963 had wildfires in Staten Island. It was called Black Sunday. Many homes burned down. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware of that. So there's just probably was just a simple lack of coverage, really, with respect to with the wildfires. I just want to show two maps real quick, folks, because we should get used to it since we're getting ready to go into the winter season. This is a you obviously don't take it literally, but I'm just out 6 days here on the European. This is the snowfall forecast for the West, and you can see with the winter storm warnings up and down the Cascades and into Northern California, that we're looking at some areas getting 30 to 40 inches in some of these orangish looking colors that you see in interior Washington and Oregon. Down into Northern California, there's a patch here where we're talking 50 to 60, at least from the European standpoint. You know that, oftentimes we scoff at models that put big amounts, but, we're talking about the mountains in the West. So there's a pretty good probability that they're going to get most of what's being forecast by the model out 6 days. And if we want to look at the Northeast, because the models have been spitting out some snows in the Northeast, and if you notice how the configuration here, it's higher elevations in West Virginia, Central PA, Northern PA, Northeast PA, the Catskills, maybe further up into the Adirondacks. This will probably change to some extent, but again, with what's going on in the East Lake this week with this upper low, um, I would say that there's a fair chance that we're going to probably see the first accumulating snows in some of these mountainous areas in New York and maybe up into central New England. And
And
I
don't
mean, if you
forget the
will,
lake effect.
and still be some lake effect. Although right along the immediate lakeshore, it may be too, it may wind up being too warm, and you'll have to go inland. Actually, the European has some wet snow down the Hudson Valley north of Route 84, and also in northwest Connecticut, if you want to believe it. And yeah, we'll of course see what happens in the next couple of days and how this ultimately plays out with the structure of the whole system here that is going to be setting up in the northeastern part of the U.S. Do you have Briller Jeopardy? Because I don't think I do.
I believe I do. Yes,
All
I
right.
do believe we have roller jeopardy, and we'll pick it up right now. And here we go. And oh, this is interesting. This particular Briller Jeopardy tonight deals with. Now, didn't we have? Didn't we have the 10? I just want to make sure here that he did say, oh, he sent this twice. That's why it was confusing to me. He sent
Okay.
the same message twice to me. The this is the a
Oh, we're
listing.
still we're still doing the Bob Barker Miss USA pageant, correct?
Uh,
We're picking the 10 semifinalists.
yeah, well, this particular question tonight deals with the 10 wettest states.
The 10
The,
wettest states.
the 10 wettest states. Didn't we
All
do the
right.
10 driest states the other night?
Yes, so the 10 wettest.
Now we have three.
I'll start it off with Florida.
Florida is on the list. It is number 5.
Number 5. Okay, I gotta write this down. 5. I have to have a pen that has ink in it to do that, which I now do. So number 5 is Florida. Let's see what the folks at the chat board have to say. As soon as I reload it on my other screen, because it just suddenly went out on me. Now remember, just remember, folks, some of these states have multiple climates. So it could be really wet on one side and really dry on the other. And when you put them together, they don't make the list. So I'm going to run through what a few people are saying here. Let's start with,
A lot of people are
uh,
putting Washington State, and
yes,
you're
Washington
absolutely
State.
right. Washington is exceedingly wet right at the Pacific coast, especially during the wintertime. But then as you go over the Cascades and east of the Cascades, that's kind of like a rain shadow. And as a result, not all that much falls. But
Right.
does the average between the two sufficient to allow for Washington to be on the list? No.
Okay. Documenting 47 on the chat board says Louisiana.
Louisiana is on the list, and in fact, Louisiana is number 2 on the list here.
Ba, 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 ba. And Jose Bermudez, thank you for hitting the tip jar. Most appreciated, sir. Um, okay, Luis Orizio and a few others, including Rich Rothmansky, Jason Fox, Hawaii.
Hawaii is number one on the chairman's list. And in fact, I think that there's one particular spot in Hawaii which would count as the wettest of all places down by well, Hilo, for example. I know based upon upslope from the northeast trade wind, parts of Hilo get like 200 or 300 inches a year.
Oh, yeah.
Some ridiculous figure like that. So
All
if
right,
you
so
ever if you ever watch a TV show, a game show, and they say, "Congratulations, you're on your way to Hawaii, and you're going to be staying for 6 nights and 5 days at the Hilo Hilton," that that really is not all that much of a prize because almost every day that you wake up, you'll be waking up to clouds and probably wet weather as well.
all right, so since we eliminated Washington, we can do a group elimination. If those of you that on the chat board that put up Oregon and California, do we take them both out? I'm assuming we're
Right.
going to take both of those
Take,
out, so they're
we
wrong.
take both of those off. Yes.
Okay. William Uber, I think, says Mississippi.
Mississippi.
SIPPI.
That used to be so hard to spell. It used to make me cry. But since I studied spelling, it's just like pumpkin pie.
Oh,
It is
God.
number 3 on the list.
Number
Mississippi.
3. Okay. Well, here's an interesting possibility. Let's check. I just had it and I lost it. Frank Scalera says Tennessee
Tennessee is there. It's number 6 on the list.
or Essinet if you Tennessee backwards. Alan Rupa brings up my home state, my new home state, Georgia.
Georgia's there. It's number 7, although on the list here, I guess Scott was typing very fast. He doesn't refer to it as Georgia. He says Georgina.
Yeah. Alan Rupa back again with South Carolina.
South Carolina, yes, South Carolina is on the list. That's number 10.
Seawater Shark says Alabama.
Alabama is there. It is number 4 on the list.
Vincent Croce, Nova Scotia is not a state. Just so you know. Just
Patrick
so you
Darcy
know.
is saying, Patrick Darcy says North Carolina. And Patrick Darcy, you're correct. It's number 9, right above South
Well,
Carolina.
how many do we have left?
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. You only have one left.
One left?
Only
Well,
one.
Carol DeCara brings up Virginia.
Virginia, I would say that be a good guess, but it's not on the list.
It's probably like 11 or 12. A few people, Fled Weather, among others, bringing up Texas. And I think Texas may be one of those states where, in the east, well, along the coast, north of Corpus Christi, they get a fair amount of rain, but then on the other side of the state, it's like a desert.
Texas is not on the
I
list.
didn't think so. William Uber brings up,
Christopedia says West Virginia. That is not on the list.
well, and not these days because they got extreme drought. William Uber brings up Alaska.
Alaska's not on the list, but we do have a winner. Mike Waterhouse Bonsai, Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Number
Ar-
8 on the list between Georgina and North Carolina.
yeah, Georgina. All right. So I guess we covered it all tonight. I did a little rant and rave, and that was about it. Hope everybody likes my Christmas tree and likes the fact that my fire actually stands still, perfectly still, for the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which will be back tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. And remember, keep it in the back of your mind. We might add a show Friday if I can get all these special guests, you know, if they're not booked to do whatever else it is they do. Um, but if we wind up doing that show, um, I'll certainly will let you know. And Joe, can you tell us our super chat givers for tonight?
Um, Unfortunately,
You can't.
I don't have a list here in front of me, so I can't
Um,
get the full list out. I should start
Okay,
doing that.
I have the full list. So Gary Crosby, Brandon Doherty, Steve Lapointe, Joe S, Gary Crosby two more times, Mark G, and Jose Bermudez. Thank you so much
Thank you all.
for thank you all, and we'll see you. Why don't I do a show with us, the regulars on the show? Well, let me figure that out. Okay, Brandon Doherty,
Thank you for thank you
let me
for
figure that
81
out.
likes tonight too.
Yes. All right, we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Bye bye.
Bye bye, folks.